Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. I recently purchased something from Aliexpress for the first time. I've never shopped on that site before, and I've never purchased watches from Aliexpress. The items that I purchased were just some watch strap buckles, and I believe they're arriving tomorrow. But I'm constantly finding brilliant watches on eBay because that's where I spend my time just perusing around, and I feel like maybe we should share the fun a little bit. So I decided to go on Aliexpress and see what I can find there that looks brilliant, although with the prices on this site, yeah, dubious at best. But there are a lot of YouTube channels out there where people hunt down Aliexpress pieces. Most of those are sporty watches or homages. Tonight I'm going to try and find amazing looking watches that are something a little bit different. So I got on there and started searching around, and the very first watch that I encountered, what? I had no idea that Aliexpress actually sold fake watches on their site. I know that they sell pieces that pretty much are fakes, but at least they have different branding on the dial. But I found this Nomos on Aliexpress with the Nomos brand name on the dial. I'm pretty sure it's not really a Nomos because it's $20. So there's that. But again, bear in mind, I am a newbie at Aliexpress, so I am coming into this like a person off the street. So other than fake Nomoses, let's see what else I can find there. I found this brilliant white dialed Bauhaus piece. It is ultra minimalist, and it's the style of Bauhaus watch that I personally love. With the batten markers, pencil hands, just super ultra minimal. This watch is actually really gorgeous looking. I love how subtle the markers are on the dial. They actually appear to be kind of lighter than just black. This reminds me a lot of my Xeno Bauhaus winder that I used to own. The case size on this watch is 36 millimeters. Brilliant. The case height is only 7.5 millimeters. Apparently it has a hardlex crystal on it. However, these watches are being sold for only $35. So I have no idea what kind of quality they would be. For that price, I feel like it would just end up being a junk watch that is obviously dirt cheap and you just don't ever feel like wearing. But I could be totally wrong. And if I am, great, because this watch looks so cool. Alright, the next watch on my list, at least I'm familiar with the brand, because I own one of their watches. I found a Pagani Design full-on cocktail time style watch. The dial on this just looks amazing, and at the 3 o'clock there's a date sub-dial. That is cool. So much better than a date window. It has Dauphine hands and great applied markers. It appears to have a box crystal on it, which is perfect. However, my beef with this watch is the same beef that I have with the cocktail times. It's kind of large for its vintage aesthetic. If you're gonna make a watch that screams mid-century, I feel like you should offer it in a couple different case sizes. One that's true to its vintage inspiration, and one that's more contemporary. These particular watches have a 40mm case on them. The case height is 11 millimeters. The lug width is 20 millimeters. These also have what is described as a hardlex crystal on them. And it's super dirt cheap like the other one, at about $38. Definitely suspect. The next watch I found is a great Max Bill style watch. And I can definitely see that the pricing is gonna be a thing with this list, because everything I find is so dirt cheap, I wouldn't buy it. It's too cheap. I could never trust a watch that's around $30. Unless it's a vintage Caravelle that I found on eBay. But I love the Max Bill aesthetic on this watch. And if the sub-dials actually work, One of those is a date subdial. Even though it looks like a chronograph, it is not. Again, assuming these subdials actually work, one of them is a 24-hour dial, one is a day of the week, and the other is the date. If they work, that is just awesome. The blue case colorway with the white dial looks pretty amazing. Same with the silver with the black dial. That watch looks great also. The side profile on these watches looks amazing. But once again, it's just too cheap and it's kind of large. These watches have 41mm cases and they're all dial, so I imagine they wear really large. The case height is 11mm, the lug width is 20mm, and the crystal on these is acrylic. So that is in keeping with sort of the Bauhaus / vintage vibes of this watch. Perfect. But they retail for just under $40. The next watch on my list is put out by another brand that I'm familiar with, Berny. I've never seen a Berny watch in person, but I've seen other YouTubers purchase these or have them listed on their wish list. This is an Art Deco-y tank style watch. I'm just sad that there's a date window on it. However, that date window almost looks like a big date. Those are pretty cool. So the date is done well on this watch. Again, they're kind of scary cheap, but at least with these pieces, they're approaching $100. The various colorways look amazing. They're kind of large for tank style watches, but again, who knows? You kind of have to see them in person. It's really difficult to gauge just how large a tank style watch will appear by looking at the numbers. The case size is 32 by 47mm. The case height is 8.2mm. The lug width is 22mm, which means it'll be kind of difficult to find dressy straps for this. I feel like when you get up into the larger straps, they tend to be more utilitarian, tool-like, even if they're leather, but you can find them, it's just a bit tougher. And the crystal on these is Hardlex. Next up, we have another Bauhaus-y watch, and this one has an amazing looking box crystal on it. Yeah, this is another Max Bill looking watch. These watches are also super cheap, but at least they're more than $30. And given the aesthetic, coming in at under 40mm, that's pretty great. However, they're large enough to reach a wide audience. They aren't so vintage size that they scare people off. Both the white and black dial variants look absolutely brilliant. There is a date window on these, but wait a minute, the date window lights up. What? That's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen that. Wild. And it's interesting, apparently this watch has a 316L stainless steel case, and a screwed down case back, and super luminova. All that for under $100? Wow, that's pretty crazy. The case size on these watches is 38mm, the case height is 11mm, the lug width is 20mm, the crystal is mineral, and these watches retail for about $58. Next up, I have a red dial watch. I absolutely love red dial watches, and at some point I want to get a decent one in the collection. I have one from India that was super cheap, and it's sitting dead on the shelf. But at some point I'm going to get a really nice one with a deep red dial, silver case, silver markers. Oh, so cool looking. And this watch here has that aesthetic. The dial on this watch looks so great, and even the light dial variant looks good too. These watches definitely have a mid-century / Grand Seiko aesthetic to them. And these watches are not quartz watches, they're actually mechanical. But being this cheap, that's even more scary. If you're gonna buy a cheap watch, I feel like quartz would be the way to go. I just would not trust a mechanical movement that is dirt cheap, like the one that's sitting dead on my shelf. I couldn't find much information as far as specifications go. I'm guessing it's around 40mm, just because it has 20mm lugs. And I have no idea what kind of movement is in it, but not a good one. Probably. Next up, we have a Tuxedo Dial watch, and this is put out by a brand that I've heard of. I think they did the 50 Fathoms homage that's on Aliexpress. These watches are put out by Thorn. These are super classy looking watches, just absolutely gorgeous. And they're cheap, but they're over $50. And again with these, apparently it has a stainless steel case. And these watches also have superluminova. However, this watch has a Miyota movement in it. So maybe it's decent? The case size on these watches is 37.8 millimeters. The case height is 9.5 millimeters. The lug width is 19 millimeters. And I think the crystal on these is mineral? I didn't see that called out. Inside these watches is a Miyota 1L45, so these are quartz watches, so they might not be too bad at that price. That price being about $62. The next watch on my list is a rose dial watch that has crosshairs on it. This is another mechanical watch, and it looks amazing. The original price on this watch is kind of a trustworthy range at over $200. So we're getting into a watch that might not be garbage, but the sale price is only $100. But it has crosshairs. That dial color is actually pretty cool. And it's sub 40 millimeters, and no date, and again, there's crosshairs. Nice. The case size is 38 millimeters, the case height is 12 millimeters, the crystal is Hardlex, and these watches are being sold for $85. Alright, the last watch on my list is absolutely brilliant looking. This is a CWC style watch, but look at that crystal. Oh, that is so amazing looking. The case size on these watches is absolutely field watch. They have bead blasted stainless steel cases, and that crystal. But it's really cheap. But that crystal, oh. The case size on these watches is 36.8 millimeters. The case height is 10.6 millimeters, even with that amazing crystal. The lug width is 19 millimeters. Ugh. The crystal is a diamond-coated mineral crystal. And these watches retail for $48. So there you have it, some watches that I found on Aliexpress that look absolutely amazing. I have no idea if they're absolute garbage or not though. A few of the brands I'm familiar with, and I know my Pagani Design moon watch is pretty cool, so thanks for watching.